Welcome back, YouTube viewers. This is Doug with Beats on Deck in collaboration with Plugged In 2010, the YouTube channel for Android tutorials and other software. Today's tutorial is going to be a brief introductory tutorial on how to use Reason 5 for the PC and Mac. If you are using a version that you don't see in the window or the tutorial here today, and you have questions regarding keyboard shortcuts or other small quick tips, please revert to the manual that is provided with your software, or look on www.propellerhead.com for manuals regarding your version of Reason if you're trying to do the same tutorial. This tutorial does work for some versions of Reason 4 as well as all the more current versions that are out there as well, and I believe Reason 5 is one of the closest ones to being final. So today's tutorial is just basically going to be an introductory tutorial, as stated before, on how to use Reason 5 and its basic principalities. Basically, that is how to lay down a beat, how to put in a loop, and how to write notes and configure them correctly in the sequencer window that you see listed below. The full functioning purpose of this tutorial is basically to let the people who have never used Reason software have a better understanding on how to actually get the beat on the paper or in the sequencer window so that it sounds good, has good rhythm, and just basically works for the user that's trying to use the software. Not everybody is an expert, and there are a lot of tutorials out there that don't really go over this, so that's the whole purpose. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to go over the quick fundamentals. Go ahead and start up your Reason software, and then create a new document by going to File, go down to New, which I've already done here, you see in the window here. The sequencer storyline writer is the window that you see listed here at the bottom that I'm tracing with the mouse. You can access this two different ways. You can click on the little three dotted line and drag it down or drag it up as you're using it, or you can detach it fully from the window so that it gives you a full screen display of the sequencer in its entirety, layering each note lane as well as each device track. For the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to leave it detached because it makes it easier to read where the notes are coming through and how the sequencer is actually putting the notes from the equipment in the rack to the storyline writer. Quick explanation on some of the things that you see here. Each one of these buttons lets you change how you're going to edit the song on the storyline. Edit mode, toggles block mode. This is your pointer indicated by the Q key on your keyboard, the pencil tool by the W key, the eraser tool by the E key, and then as you move across you can see exactly what they do. Your flags in the storyline writer are L and R. This means your left flag and your right flag for each set in the loop. So if you have a loop enabled, like we are going to for this tutorial down here, by clicking and quantize recording, which makes sure the notes stay in tempo with the beat that is being dialed in. We're going to go ahead and dial in 110 on this by double clicking in the BPMs down below and hitting enter. The left flag and the right flag indicate where the loop starts and stops, left coming from the start and right flag coming from stop. And if loop is enabled, this will start here, go to here, and then repeat. At this point in time, we have an 8-bar loop as indicated by the numbers that are outlined in the storyline writer or the sequencer. The flag sitting in the right flag just before the 9 on the left side of it indicates that this loop is going to be an 8-bar loop. If I was to move this flag to just on the other side of 5, that would be a 4-bar loop. For this port right here, we're just going to use 4 bars because it makes it a little easier to understand. And then if you move your mouse down to the lower right hand corner to this small 6 or 9 dotted slider and left click and hold, it will zoom in the sequencer to the amount of bars in the loop, and in this case you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a 4-bar loop that we'll be using for this tutorial. You can go ahead and do that now if you wish. Make sure you set your quantize record and your loop on, so that way it just keeps going through this and we don't have to worry about having to stop and drag the play position indicator right here back to the start of the loop every time. We're going to press Alt-Tab and go back to the rack. For this tutorial, I'm going to actually delete the default mastering suite and the mixer and replace them with a little bit more robust one. Helps bring out the sound, and I'll go over that as we go along. So right click on the mastering suite and go to delete devices and tracks. Click on the mixer and do the same thing. And what we are going to do for this one is we're going to create a M-Class Mastering Suite combi, set it to bypass because we do not want to apply any sound changes until after we're done. This allows for more accurate representation of the equipment and the instruments as they're being played before we actually alter the sound at the end of the tutorial. So we set that to bypass by left clicking and sliding it up. We're going to minimize this, and then we're going to right click and add a mixer 14 to 2. In Reason, you have the ability to look at the back wiring of the combination suite or anything that goes in a combinator, in this case the M-Class Mastering Suite and the 14x2 mixer. So if you click the Tab key on your keyboard, you can then see the back end of the wiring and how this all originates into the mastering suite, from the equalizer to the stereo imager, from the stereo imager to the compressor, from the compressor to the maximizer, and then from the maximizer up into the combi unit. And in this case, we're coming out of the combi, or all of our equipment will be coming into the mixer from here, and then it goes out into the combinator via the combinator, and then the combinator goes out into the master VU input-output interface of the Reason software. This allows you to do multiple changes and add multiple pieces of equipment and instruments to create the unique sound that you wish to go for. Today's tutorial is not going to be that complicated. We'll just go through some simple things, basic fundamentals. So press the Tab key, brings us back to this. We're going to minimize the mastering suite at this point in time because we don't need it. And the first thing that we're going to do is right click, create a combinator, and we're going to call this one the beat. By double clicking on the combinator icon label, it will then label it, call it the beat, and it will assign it to lane track 1 inside the 14x2 mixer. Once we're done in there, click in the black so that you have the left click in the black and it shows red. Then you right click, and we're going to go ahead and put down just a simple pattern with a simple beat, comprised of a kick and a set of claps. And we are going to use the Regroup drum computer, since it seems to be the simplest of the ones that are out there. For the intents of this purpose, I want you guys to get into the fundamental fact of anytime you open up the Regroup computer, until you get used to how the patches work, and this what they call the secondary sampling of each channel lane that you see up in here, which is indicated by 1 through 10. Go ahead and start initializing your patches and then loading your patches using the folder find window here. Any samples today that are used by us here at Beats on Deck and myself during this tutorial, if they're not provided by the Reason standard factory kit, we'll go ahead and put links to those RAR files so that you can use those samples if you wish to recreate this tutorial in its entirety. First things we need to do is initialize the patch to blank it out and make sure that everything is back to default. So we'll right click and go to Initialize Patch. That then shows the init patch, which means everything's blanked out as you see up above, meaning no signs, no dials, no adjustments, no music, no files are loaded into the Regroup computer, allowing us for a clean and concise creation of the beat. So we're going to click the folder icon and load up a Regroup drum kit. By default, it's going to load the RFSB, which is in this case, for all intents and purposes of the tutorial, Reason Factory Sound Bank. We are going to use hip hop kits, and I'm going to use number 7 since I happen to know that this one works really good for what I want. And once it's loaded, it will show what you have here. You have the name of the sample that's being used all the way across in each channel, and in this case we have a boom, which is a kick, and then you have a clap, a snare drum, bass drum, bass drum, bass drum, bass drum, bass drum, and then another clap. This is a quieter clap than this clap. You can't really hear because I have the volume down kind of low. Let me turn it up a little bit. That's one of them, and then here's one of the kick drums. Alright, so we're gonna use this one and this clap right here. And that's the kind of the pattern we're gonna go for. And it's pretty simple to do. We will first click on the channel that we're going to use, which I think is number 5, and we'll set the pattern. And a standard hip hop pattern is going to be 1, 4, and 11, and that will sound like this. And if you can't hear it, it's basically kick, 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 and then you alternate on 5 and 13 the claps. So we'll go to the clap. Actually, what we'll do is, now that we know that this is how we want this to sound, we're going to actually write this to the track first and create a new lane, which I really recommend you get in the habit of. Every time you lay down a different pattern or a different instrument, write a new lane into your sequencer, because that allows you the ability to go back into the lane, make adjustments, and not affect other parts of the actual pattern or the beat that you've already created. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go uncheck this box by left clicking so that the pattern doesn't have the selection to it. We're going to right click and then go copy pattern to track. And as you've seen in the back window over here, it then wrote the pattern of the beat for the kick drum into the window of the sequencer. So you see it here. This is basically kick at 1, kick at 4, kick at 11, 1, 4, and 11, and it just repeats all the way through for 4 bars, which is what we want. So we will move on with that. To add the clap on a different lane, you can either click the lane plus or right click and create new note lane. So we've now created a new note lane by left clicking the note lane that you have indicated by the darker color. That then indicates which lane will be written for the new pattern or the new sequence of notes. So we'll go back to the rack and we will select the clap, which the clap is this one right here. So you can hear that. We will click on 3. And we will go ahead and write that pattern. But before we do that, I'm going to clear the pattern on 5 just so that there's no conflictions moving forward. So we go click on 5, left click, then right click on that and clear pattern. Go back to 3. Excuse me while we have some mouse difficulties that I'm now noticing. I apologize for the delay. Okay. Back on track. Sorry about that delay with technical difficulties that the mouse did not want to respond. So now that we've got the pattern cleared out of lane 5, we're going to go click on lane 3. We're going to enable pattern so we can hear it. And we're going to click a 5 and we're going to click a 13. And we're going to actually set the dynamic, which is actually the velocity in this case, to 13 and hard, so that way that we can actually get some kind of punch to it. And then we'll go ahead and play that. Alright, so that's exactly what I'm looking for. What we're going to do now is left click that so that it's not on the pattern sequencer, but we're going to go ahead and write it to the pattern track on the sequencer behind it. So we copy that like that, and then we right click and clear the pattern so that we don't have to worry about that. Now we basically have a kick and a clap in the 2 lanes. Kick on the lower, clap on the high. So if we play that, alright, so now we've got the kick and the clap, and it repeats through, and it's 1, 4, 5, then 11, 13, 1, 4, 5, 11, 13. And that's a pretty good swingy kind of beat that lets you, gets the standard hip hop feel to it. Because it sounds kind of mechanical, I want to throw a little bit of an offset to it. So while we're in the sequencer here, there's a nice little thing called the Regroup that's built into Reason 5. So we're going to click that, and it allows us to assign different alterations to the channels, as you see here with these 2 drop-down boxes. For A1, we're going to go ahead and click the folder, and we're going to go into, make sure you go into the RFSB, Regroup patches, MP60, and we're going to set this to about 62. You get anything higher than about 69 or 70% in the shuffle groove, it starts to sound like really off, and it doesn't really, it just seems kind of warped. So I always try to keep it between 52 and 65 anytime I'm doing any hip hop tracks, and it just kind of creates a better realism and a little bit more swingy feel. So we're going to go ahead and set that, and we're going to uncheck that. Now that's set on A1. You may ask, how do you get that in there so that it sounds good? Well, then you go into your lanes and you set A, 62% shuffle, A, 62% shuffle. So that basically is going to shuffle the beat and shuffle the claps so that they kind of alternate a little bit more and give a more realistic swingy kind of feel. If you alt tab back in here, you'll notice that there's also a shuffle key in here, that you can left click while doing the pattern, which will also kind of do the same effect, but the MPCs are more dialable, more customizable, and more interchangeable. So I recommend using the MPCs because they're more customizable, more creatable, but in this case you can do what you want. I just recommend using the MPCs. So now that we've done that, you heard what it sounded like before, which was kind of mechanical. Good, but kind of mechanical. We're going to go ahead and play it through now. I'm going to reset it by left clicking on the indicator position marker and dragging it to the left, and then I'm going to play it now. Now listen. Okay. Now what that does is that allows you to see what basically I've added a little bit more of a swing to it, which alternates and adds a slight delay when it's processing the song to the clap or the beat to the clap. So at the end though, I want to add a little bit of a difference in the beat so that it actually tells when it's coming to the next part of the loop. So we're going to left click, or we're going to hit the Q key or the selection tool. And then we're going to click on this lane, left click one time, which now tells me I've selected it. And then we're going to double click on it, which brings us into the editor. And now we can go in here and modify the notes as they play. And I'm going to click the pencil tool or the W key, and I'm going to write in 2 more kicks at the very end to let it know that I'm coming around to the next repeat. So you play through again. Alright, so now you have like that da-dun dun at the very end, which signifies that you're coming through in the next part of the loop. So just adding that the 2 extra kicks right at the end, or one note before the end of the actual sequence, kind of adds variation to the beat to let the listener know that it's changing. The variation is usually really nice, especially, and it's used a lot in a lot of different songs. Usually indicative of like an 808 snare roll or a rapid increasement of percussionary type instruments, bongo drums, snare drums, or kick drums. So we've now added that at the very end. We are good with the clap. We want to add an alternating hi-hat now, just to kind of give it some tempo. So we're going to go ahead and add a new lane here. And then we're going to go Alt-Tab, and we're going to click back into our patterns and make sure our patterns are clear, which they are. And we're going to go find ourselves a hi-hat. And we want it to kind of be closed. That's a pretty good one. Alright, so for this one we'll click on 7, and we will go to this, and we're going to make this go 32 steps because I want the beat to be twice as long for each bar. And then by choosing that, you'll have to use the slider to go up, left click between 17 and 32, which lets you edit the next sequence of steps. So we're going to use this one first. And we're going to go 1. Yeah, we're going to go through all of this. So it's going to sound like this. And then we're going to edit the next set. Actually, I don't want that to be that high because that sounds like it's clipping. Alright, sliding the indicator to 17 to 32, we then can get the rest of the pattern. And I'm going to alternate the last channel in the actual sequence, so it's going to sound like this. And that slight variation allows for the sound to actually sound more evolving as it goes through the beat when it's used with the kick and the clap. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and write this to the track as well. So we left click on the button to disable the pattern section. We right click and go copy pattern to track. It then writes the hi-hat closed sequence in the pattern. So we will go ahead and play that through. Alright, so that sounds pretty good for what I can hear right now. I do want to add another lane in here that's actually going to be an alternating open hat. So you have the closed hat, which is the and then you want something open, which kind of accents it. So we're going to go ahead and add a lane. So left click on the plus, add a lane, and then Alt Tab, go back to your redrum computer, and we are going to find a hi-hat that's open. We're going to select this one, left click, select that, and I'm actually going to go open a new patch hi-hat, and in this case we're going to use the exclusive drums sorted. We're actually going to go to the reason, my folder, and then XXL drum samples, and then hi-hats open, and I'm going to get something that's got a good feel to it. So, and I'll include this at the bottom in the RAR so that way you can use it in case you want to play with it as well. Alright, we're going to use the one called Shake Your Ass. So this one sounds really good. So we'll load up that one. So Shake Your Ass is in lane 2. And now remember, in the first 16 of the first closed hat, it was all of them clicked in at the same time. But you don't want it to sound like that because then they just occlude each other. And it sounds like a big mess. So you want to alternate your first 16 to your second 16 and their pattern. So you flip-flop the pattern. So it would sound like instead of doing the first 16 all lit up and then the next 16 every even one, you would go every even one on the first 16 and then every one lit up on the second 16. So it's a reverse of the pattern you have here. So in this case we're going to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Slide the indicator up to 17 by 12, and then we're going to light all these up and then enable the pattern, and now you'll be able to hear it.